Once the stars have arrived, it's always good to get started. And thank you all for coming out on this excellent mud season day. We appreciate it, always. My name is Mark Basir. I am the Judy and Leonard Lauder Director at the Portland Museum of Art. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees at the museum and the staff, we welcome you. We welcome you to the 2026 Bernard Osher Lecture, Women Laughing, Film Screening and Discussion with Heather Cox Richardson and Liza, Donnelly. Thank you all. While you're here at USM, one of the great partners of the museum, be sure you get a chance to go over and check out the very cool Crew Art Center down the road, and also the McGoldrick Student Center across the street, both, I would say, using mass timber as the PMA wants to be using in our future building. We're very grateful to many of you who are also members of the museum. Thank you. I'd first like to acknowledge that we are convening tonight's celebration in the land of the dawn, a region encompassing present-day Maine and the unceded homelands of the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, and Abenaki nations. Together, these nations represent the Wabanaki Confederacy. They stewarded these lands and waters for thousands of years before the establishment of national borders and state lines, and continue to do so today. I think I'm clicking forward, but it's not clicking. First slide, please. If you can do it in the booth. Great, thank you. Wanted to just take a few minutes to share some of the highlights coming up at the museum this summer. We're going to be opening the AMP, which is PMA spelt backwards, as an outdoor pavilion right next to the Payson building. It's a co-lab art space to support local music, dance, and film, and it's going to be a mass timber structure designed by architects Lever. It's made of whole trees that were sustainably harvested, graded, and milled in Maine with a chain of custody. Next slide, please. All right. If all goes well, we should be up and running in July. Next slide, please. In July, we'll also be opening an amazing Winslow Homer exhibition, Painter Etching. So I hope you'll also come visit this unbelievable show. Next slide, please. Thank you. So please come downtown this summer for some great art to support local businesses, try our new public parking lot, and see a transformed Congress Square. We hope by this summer that the city will be finally finished with what seems to be a 25-year project to get Congress Square ready to go. Since 1988, the Bernard Osher Lecture Series has been the PMA's flagship annual event, welcoming visionary cultural leaders, scholars, and thinkers to Maine to share their insights and their experiences with museum audiences. Past Osher lectures have included Teresa Secord, artist and founder, Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance; Thelma Golden, director of the Studio Museum; Faith Ringgold, painter and author and artists Christo and Jean-Claude; Dale Chihuly, and historian Gwendolyn Dubois-Shaw. This annual program honors Bernard A. Osher, a great friend to the museum who has demonstrated tremendous dedication to the city of Portland and educational opportunities in the state of Maine, including the Osher Lifelong Learning Centers, and there's one here at USM as well. He celebrates his 98th birthday in Maine last year, and I was with him just 2 weeks ago, and he had just come back from a fly fishing trip. And right now, he sends his greetings. He and his wife, Barbara, the Oshers are so important to us. They send their greetings. And he wanted to remind you all that he plans to be here for his 99th birthday this summer. We are delighted to have Heather Cox Richardson and Liza Donnelly here tonight. Heather may be the most impactful person in our state. Thank you. And Liza shows us every day the importance of how illustration, like no other medium, communicates the full spectrum of life. There will be a brief Q&A at the end of the program, and you can scan this QR code on the screen and then send us your questions, and then we'll collect those questions during the talk and come back with those questions at the end of the program. I now would like to actually introduce our introducer, my good friend and great writer, Lily King. Lily. It's so nice to be in such a friendly audience. I really, really appreciate it. Lily King is a beloved member of our creative community in Portland. She is a New York Times bestselling author of 6 novels, as well as the story collection 5 Tuesdays in Winter. Her most recent novel, Heart the Lover, was published in 2025. I've read almost all of your books, Lily. This one was just as amazing. It's a finalist for the Women's Prize, the PEN/Faulkner Award, and the British Book Award. In 2020, the novel Writers and Lovers won the New England Society Book Awards and was a New York Times notable book and chosen as top 10 books of 2020 by the Washington Post. Her 2014 Euphoria, which I also loved, was named one of the 10 best books of 2014 and won the Kirkus Award, the New England Book Award, and was a finalist for the National Book Critics Award. We are very proud of her work here in Maine, coming from Portland, and we can't wait for your next book, Lily. May I introduce Lily King to the stage?
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here, isn't it? Aren't we just so lucky that we got tickets? I just feel I wouldn't have gotten a ticket because they sold out so quickly if I hadn't been asked to do this. So I'm like so grateful. Thank you so much to the PMA. Mark, your museum just gives us so much, and it brings us together on a day like today, and it brings us together all the time. And we are so grateful, and I think we just need to have a round of applause for the PMA. We're so lucky to have you, and we should never, ever, ever take that for granted. It is such an honor to be here introducing these 2 extraordinary women. It's not surprising that they are friends and collaborators. They are 2 people who doggedly, every day, help us see. They are putting our reality in perspective for us. I heard a comedian on the radio a couple of days ago say that humor helps us metabolize the facts of our world. Liza Donnelly has been finding, drawing, and writing things that make us laugh since she drew her first cartoon for her mother when she was 7 years old. She is a writer, director, and award-winning cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine. She directed, along with director Kathleen Hughes, and produced this documentary we are about to see, Women Laughing, about women cartoonists of the New Yorker. She contributes to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and is the author of 18 books, most recently, Very Funny Ladies, the New Yorker's women cartoonists. Donnelly publishes a daily newsletter, Seeing Things, on politics, culture, and humor. Donnelly's TED Talk, Drawing on Humor for Change, was translated into 42 languages and has been viewed over 1.5 million times. She has spoken at the United Nations in New York and Geneva, the New Yorker Festival, South by Southwest, TEDx, universities, NGOs, and corporate venues in the United States and abroad, and is a cultural envoy for the US State Department. Donnelly was the first cartoonist to be granted access on location to live draw the Academy Awards. A Vassar College visiting scholar and a Barnard College leadership fellow. She is a recipient of an honorary PhD from the University of Connecticut. It's so funny. I'm so much more nervous doing this than anything I do for my own books. I'm like literally shaking, and I never shake. Donnelly has been coming to Maine since she went to camp on Sebago Lake. In college, she came for a program to East Machias and helped build a yurt library in the woods for writer, thinker, and environmentalist Bill I'm not going to say this right, Copthwaite. She bought property near Addison in 1981 and built a camp there 30 years ago, and she and her family are devoted summer residents. Women Laughing is a magical film, as you will see, and it will make you want to change jobs immediately. It's just like, what? I am in the wrong business. After the showing, Liza Donnelly will be in conversation with Maine's own Heather Cox Richardson. Have you all ever had the experience of going out walking the dog in the morning and you run into a neighbor and you get to talking and one of you launches into something about Fort Sumter or Abraham Lincoln's last words or the Strait of Hormuz, and the other person has to say, yeah, I know. Heather told me too. I mean, it's true, right? We all have that every day. She told like 6 million of us last night at 2:42 a.m. There's mansplaining, which is bad, and there's Heather-splaining, which is good. Very good. I mean, Heather-splaining is vital, and it has become over the past 7 years. Very, very vital. This woman from Round Pond, Maine, is giving us the big picture, giving us perspective in real time every single day. She zooms in, she zooms out. She has changed how we think about history every day. It's really extraordinary to me. Except for the rare day when we get a gorgeous Peter Ralston photo and we're so relieved she's taken the night off because the whole country worries about her lack of sleep. Heather Cox Richardson is an author and a historian of 19th century America, specializing in politics and economics. Her nightly newsletter, Letters from an American, reaches over 6 million readers. Heather's award-winning books span subjects from the Civil War and Reconstruction to the Gilded Age, the American West, and the history of the Republican Party through the Trump administration. She is the author, most recently, of the best-selling Democracy Awakening, Notes on the State of America. Jane Mayer has called the book a vibrant and essential history of America's unending, enraging, and utterly compelling struggle since its founding to live up to its own best ideals. She hosts the series Journey to American Democracy and American Conversations on YouTube and other social media platforms. Her articles and reviews have been published in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Guardian, among other outlets. I asked how Liza and Heather knew each other, and Liza wrote back. Heather and I know each other because I reached out to her. A few years ago, as a huge fan of her Substack, I thought I'd suggest drawings to go with her amazing reportage. She responded, and I was thrilled she knew who I was and wanted to collaborate on a book together, which is still in the works. Very exciting. Currently on Substack, we do monthly video collaborations about historically significant events and people that relate to current politics. I draw a cartoon to go along with Heather's words. How cool is that? We have a president and an entire administration who distort reality every day. These two women are working so hard to set it to rights for us. Being told 2 + 2 = 5 is crazy making. They help us stay sane. They make us laugh. They make us see. They hold us together. And we are so grateful that they are right here with us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Let's hear it for the cartoonists.
Well, and congratulations. That's
Thank you,
absolutely
Heather.
wonderful.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Well, I want to start actually in a different place than I had intended to by asking what made you think to make this film. It's a different medium for you.
Well, I did the book, that was about women cartoonists. I did the first edition of that in 2005, so, ages ago. But then I did a new edition because there was that moment in time when there were more women than men in one issue. And the publisher said, yeah, let's do another edition. And we did, with more information. But then I thought, I really want more people to know about these women. The books are great, but I wanted people to, and also I wanted people to see them and see the drawing. So this movie is about women's voices. And I really wanted to get at them show how it's not, like I said, not just about the joke, it's about drawing, it's about expressing your life. And women have not been able to do that, or had not been listened to for centuries, so.
Can people hear in the back? Is that you? No, okay, so can you either
Sorry,
adjust us
speak.
or, good. Well, so the book really focuses on the history of the women who have been cartooning for the New Yorker since the beginning. And some of their stories are fascinating, and I would love to hear you. You've spoken very meaningfully elsewhere about the woman who drew Helen Hokinson, who drew the women going to the Yale Club, which is one of my favorites. But also some of the other women who became cartoonists in a sort of an acerbic observation of the lives of women at the time, and then sort of lost their voices in the 1950s. And I'd love to talk about that, but I also am surprised by the degree to which this film doesn't really reflect that so much as the interplay of individuals, communities, and art, which is in the book, but there's much less history here than there is in the book, and much more, I think, a commentary on the modern day. So why don't we start with some of your favorite cartoonists from the 1920s and how they lost their voices? Barbara Sherman, for example.
Yeah, Barbara Sherman, it is louder now. Barbara Sherman, who did the mansplaining cartoon and the I Want to Be a Widow cartoon, she's my favorite cartoonist. They're all great, but there's something about her work. She was acerbic and really spoke to what it was like to be a woman in the 20s and 30s, which was, in New York, was a really exciting time for women, from my understanding, from my reading, that there was a sense of freedom. We just got the vote. Urban areas, certain demographics felt like they could do anything. So can imagine a woman in her early 20s, as Barbara was, deciding, living in San Francisco, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to become an artist. That's huge. I mean, it seems like normal to us now, but women didn't do that. They were expected to be wives and mothers. So she did that. She came from San Francisco, heard about this New Yorker magazine, a comic weekly that was starting in 1925, and she decided to submit. And so her observations of life in the city were about what it was like to be a flapper, because I envisioned that she was like that. She was going out and partying, smoking, drinking, observing that world. And she wrote her own captions. Not everybody did necessarily, but she did. And she just had a great tone, and our stuff is sort of feminist in a New Yorker cartoon kind of way, indirectly. It sort of makes you see it in a way that you hadn't seen it before. But so what happened with Barbara, and the New Yorker got very famous by the mid-30s. Cartoons were huge, and Esquire started in 1935, I believe, a men's magazine, and I get the feeling that Barbara was struggling at the New Yorker. I did research in the archives, and that's what I began to see. She was traveling a lot. She also liked to go abroad, but she was having trouble because the flapper era had ended, the Depression had hit, World War II was looming, and the country got much more conservative, as I say in the movie. So her voice, she was having more trouble expressing that feminist voice that she had in the 20s, and started selling to Esquire. She started using a writer, and she just lost her feminist voice, and it's very sad. So she's sort of an example of what was happening to women in general, I think, in that time period.
So there are a number of places this film is, I think, sort of paying homage to the old New Yorker. It was that the dogs at the beginning seemed to me to be nodding to James Thurber.
The what?
The dogs in the very first scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Who became famous for his dogs in the early years of the cartoon. But they also, it was not coincidence that you put the writers around the Algonquin. Right. So can you tell us a little bit about why the Algonquin becomes so famous?
Well, that those scenes at the Algonquin, we almost didn't do that because it's very complicated. As a new filmmaker, I didn't know that, but it's very complicated to shoot that many people around a table. Everybody was mic'd, there was cameras everywhere, but we really wanted to do it. I wanted to bring more women to sit around a table together, and of course, the Algonquin Round Table is famous for its its witty writers, mostly Dorothy Parker. I was thinking about her the whole time. And we thought maybe we'd bring her up in the movie. We decided not to, just because it's a little too one step removed from the subject. But I was thinking about her. But everybody seems to love those scenes because I think, looking back on it now, it's because they're seeing women coming together and talking about their lives and their creativity and their problems, and we hunger for that. I think it's hopeful to see that happening.
Well, so the Algonquin in the early days of the New Yorker had its own place, and the Round Table at the Algonquin did as well. Do you want to tell people about that, since it involves our very own E.B. White?
I mean, what do you mean by its own place?
Well, just that they used to meet there for lunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, I'm not entirely sure. It started as just a lunchtime thing for a few writers, and it became a regular event. E.B. White went a few times. Dorothy Parker, Harold Ross would stop by. Benchley was there. A lot of mostly writers. I don't think any cartoonists came. Cartoonists were friends with some of these people, but they didn't come to the round table. But it was, at the time, it became writers around the table making jokes and making fun of each other in really acerbic ways, and it became a thing. So they almost were competing with each other for making the nastiest kind of joke they could make about their friends.
But also great writing came out of it.
Yeah.
But also great writing, and I love that that you sat around it. But I would argue that what people love about the women coming together is partly them coming together, and I'd love to dig into that. But isn't it cool to watch those women with those big sheets of paper bring the paper to life? And I just, one of the reasons I love working with Liza is because I actually will confess, I don't love the videos that the two of us do together because I don't feel we need me. And I don't like that there's my face there. I wouldn't mind just being behind it, because she takes a blank piece of paper and she just starts making lines. And then, all of a sudden, they start to come to life. And I just think it's an incredible miracle to see that happen. I don't know about you, but I subscribe to seeing things. And I don't always open it. Some days I leave it as a little present for later, And I just like that she's there. And that's one of the things, actually, that producing daily on Substack has enabled you and a number of people to do, is develop your own worlds that you cannot do when you're selling cartoons to a publication that has its own imperatives.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. The media, for those of us who create, has changed a lot. You as well, I'm sure. You would start yours on Facebook, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But we pretty much do the same thing on that. But one of the things that really jumped out to me, anyway, was the degree to which so many of the women cartoonists around that table were creating cartoons. And first of all, I love the woman who's like, I can't draw a cat. I'm like, I didn't realize that there was anything that...
But she can draw a cat. That's funny. I know she can. So the thing is, what does drawing a cat mean? Does it mean rendering a cat perfectly? No. Talk about James Thurber, who was the book of cartoons that my mother gave me was a book of James Thurber cartoons. So Thurber, and I was just talking to my husband, who's a New Yorker cartoonist as well, Michael Maslin, about how Thurber made it you feel like you could draw, because he didn't know how to draw, but yet his drawings were beautiful, and they came straight from his heart to his hand, and it makes you feel like anybody could draw, because it's not about rendering something perfectly, it's about expressing something, right?
And he was a writer first. I mean, the
That's
cartoons
right.
came later. It
Yeah.
was a real shock when he started to sell them, right?
And there's a story. Do you know the story, Heather? Speaking of E.B. White, they were starting out the New Yorker. E.B. White and James Thurber were friends, and they had an office together. And Thurber was always doodling. He was writing for the magazine. He was doing his humor pieces already, and as was White. And he would draw these doodles and just throw them in the trash. And then E.B. White discovered, he knew he was drawing. He took one out of the trash and took it up to Harold Ross. And the story's a little bit longer than I'm going to shorten it. And Harold Ross says, what is this? I'm not going to buy that. What is this? And then E.B. White and Harold Ross went ahead and did a book together called Is Sex Necessary?, which is a really funny book. It was published in 1929 at the height of the Depression, and it was a bestseller, right? Can you imagine in the Depression? Harold Ross found out about it. He was furious that his two people went off and did something on their own, and he said, where's that goddamn drawing? I want to publish Thurber. So that's how Thurber became a cartoonist.
And it's funny because we remember him now more as a cartoonist than we do as a writer.
Do we? Do you think so? Yeah, I guess we do.
I think so, yeah. But so let's talk a little bit then about the relationship between these inner monologues that cartoonists are producing and how they seem to be reflecting universality. So, because it's really interesting to me the way people laughed, especially at the cartoon about the mother saying to her child, this is a magic potion that makes everything you say interesting. And everybody's nodding, right? We all get that. And yet the cartoonist argues that it comes from within an individual. And that relationship between cartoons and a universality and the present strikes me as being in this moment a way of moving the political ball, the social ball forward, but I don't think I understand the mechanism for that. Do you think about, when you sit down to do a cartoon, do you just doodle and then something comes out of it? Is it because something is bothering you? Is it an attempt to reach a certain point? Or are you aiming for moving society?
Yes.
I asked for that.
No, I mean, one thing I wanted to make a point when I did this film was that, and we start the film with me looking on the street, mostly looking out at things, right? So I wanted to make a point of that. That's what cartoonists do. We're not just sitting at our desk cracking jokes and making ourselves laugh, although I think some do. Most of us we're like sponges. Most of us are observing, we're watching, we're reading, and keeping the pulse of what's going on, and then it comes back out on the paper. So I start with drawing. As you heard, Emily Flake starts with writing, so everybody's different in how they come up with those ideas. But so the problem is, and what's so great about the Substack and other media now, is that you can put that stuff online. You don't have to go through a gatekeeper, an editor, or a corporation that has owns the magazine or whatever, and you can create those ideas that you're seeing in the culture and share them with people. Like, there's a couple of mine in there that did not make it in the New Yorker for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not judging, I'm just saying they didn't make it in. The War on Women didn't make it in. Good Girl or Slut didn't make it in. So those are things that I saw that were pissing me off. And I wanted to draw them, and I just did them, submitted them, they rejected them, and then I put them on the internet, so.
Well, but that's important in this moment, the degree to which the gatekeepers have ceased to be able to stifle certain kinds of especially artistic production. And I'm interested in that because of the ways in which it strikes me that this moment is changing so quickly, and we're hearing so many new voices, but that a lot of that does seem to come from artistic expression. And that, I mean, do you think about that when you're out there every day commenting on the world from a feminist perspective, as are all these other women, in a way that they were certainly not in the 1950s, because the gatekeepers are no longer there.
Or even the 1980s, too. So you think, are you seeing online more expression artistically? And if so, where? What are you thinking of? Not just cartoons, but...
Well, cartoons are interesting because, as you were saying in the Around the Round Table, they are really accessible in a way that a book is not, in a way that fine art is not, in a way that symphonies are not. And the degree to which you are seeing more cartoons and more voices like yours representing women who are overwhelmed by home and work, or by, you're not the carefree woman I married. gives a voice to a group of people who were not previously represented in politics, not just in art. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I just worry, as Roz says, I worry about the future of cartooning. There's not that many places to share it, although online there are. I mean, when I started, there were many more magazines where you could publish your work. And of course, we're also speaking to our own demographic, and I don't know how to break out of that. I don't know how artists can break out of that. It's another conversation, but cartoonings are struggling right now, even political cartoons. So I want to ask you questions.
Well, but it's your film. You're more interesting than I am. Well, okay, so it does strike me that both you and I have worked in media that did not let us fully produce until those gatekeepers disappeared. And one of the things about Barbara Sherman, for example, or Helen Hokinson, is that the silencing of voices like that created that backlash of the 1950s, 1960s, and so forth, that in many ways, if you look around the world today, the people who are changing the world right now in the United States of America are women.
Yeah, right.
And the relationship between that and art, our art, interests me. Is that fair, do you think? I mean, you're seeing it through cartooning. I was shocked by the idea that it's not till 2017 there are more women than men cartoonists in New York.
It's been really slow. And for example, in the 70s, when I came in and Roz came in and two other women were there, it was a new cartoon editor, a man, Lee Lorenz, who I interviewed him for my book, and I said, were you looking for women cartoonists? He said, no, I was looking for new ways to express humor. And so if you do that, it's genius. If you look for different ways to express humor, and this is true of literature, I believe, you will get different voices, different perspectives, and that's what he did. But it was slow. And then when Bob Mankoff came on, editor, he brought in a few more women, but it wasn't until, frankly, a woman became cartoon editor that we got more women cartoonists, because they could see and feel it's okay to express myself and draw about perimenopause. So, in a way that men would understand too. I mean, it's not, these things can cross genders.
Well, the element of humor in it, of course, matters dramatically as well. In the changing of society and the joy and the humor that you bring a group of people together to create, it is very different than something like I do.
I think he wants us to keep, we could talk forever, I don't know.
I hate to be the person who hops on the stage. I want to keep going, but we have some questions. Do you all mind if I pass you some of the questions we have from our audience? But before we do, thank you all so much. This is so fabulous.
And I want to thank the Portland Museum of Art for hosting us, and to Heather for being here with me.
Can I ask you this one?
Okay.
Because it fits right in. Women's rights are being curtailed, making our opportunities to laugh harder to find. What do you do to keep laughing through the rage?
Well, I think because I can cross over from political cartoons into New Yorker cartoons, when I want to really laugh, I pull back to do cartoons about daily life, about what we all go through, about what's happening in my marriage or my children or the subway or whatever. So that's, I don't know, that's how I take a break. We were talking about this earlier. You don't take those breaks anymore. We don't see those photographs pop up.
Oh, I write history. My breaks are.
Oh, that's
history.
right. Your break is writing history.
Yeah, I have fun writing history. So those are my breaks. I think maybe we talked a little bit about how cartoons fit into social change, didn't we?
Yeah, but I want to ask you something, though. I'm going to take this opportunity. One thing I wanted to ask you is, so I've observed these women taking bold moves to make change, and they didn't think they were taking bold moves to make change. They just did what they wanted to do, and that became something remarkable. In your research, when you were studying Civil War and Reconstruction, were there women that stood out to you that were doing something that they just did because they felt they had to do, and it became remarkable?
Well, and they also felt they were good at it. The one that always gets me is Frances Perkins from here in Maine, right? Because she does not have a resume from her childhood that says, I'm going to do great stuff. And she comes from, she actually comes from Massachusetts, but she grows up in Newcastle with her in the summers with her grandmother. And, she goes to school and she's pretty, average. I mean, not average as in grade. She's very, very smart, but she's very clearly just thinking about the world the way any woman from her position would do. And she had a class that inspired her to actually spend time with women in factories. And she recognized that many of the prejudices with which she had grown up were just wrong. And so she starts to get involved in the settlement house movement, and she starts to look into what life is like for women working in the factories at the time. And then, of course, as you all know, probably she observes the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, which is truly horrific. And I would urge you, if you ever get a chance, to go see the building, which I did not realize this. A friend took me there a while ago. The inside burned, but the facade is still the same, which is really eerie to look at because you don't have to imagine what it was like. You can see it. And the children, the women and girls, and there were a few men, were jumping out of the windows and hitting the sidewalk. And the sound of them hitting the sidewalk was one that was really what did it. You could not only see them, although they were covered with lots of clothing in those days, but the sound of the bodies hitting the sidewalk was transformative for a number of people, including her. And she took the skills that she had and began to work with settlement house workers, but also she recognized that if anything was going to get done, she had to work with the machine politicians in New York City. And she develops working relationships with these guys that she had previously disdained and recognized that the way you move the ball is to move it through political groups, essentially, even ones you don't necessarily like. And in 3 years after, once they started working with the New York legislature, they passed 36 laws to protect workers in New York City. And of course, from that group, she gets to know people like Eleanor Roosevelt, who is working with them, and she's married to this guy. And when they go into the White House, Frances Perkins goes with them, and she's become Secretary of Labor. And then in 1935, we get the Social Security Act, which dramatically changes the American government. And that's one of those things that, I suspect when she was a 7-year-old playing on, her grandmother's farm, she never thought, you know what, I'm going to change the entire nature of the United States of America. But she did it just by following her interests and developing her skills. And that's why I always say, just keep putting one right foot in front of the other, because you just never know where you're going to end up and what you're going to do, so long as you're trying to do the right thing every day. So she's my lady.
That's great. Remarkable. I think in the film, I hope you can see that these women are just doing what they like to do and what they think they can do, and they're listening. Part of cartooning is listening to yourself think and observing other people, and then trying to figure out a way to put it on paper so that other people can understand what you're talking about. And to that point, here's another question. How much do cartoon editors edit? Not very much, not now anymore. They may have done more editing back in the 20s and 30s, but now very little. And that's what the beauty of the system, but also the headache for the system is that there's so much rejection. You have to get sort of numb to it, or try to. You never do, as Roz says in the film. But you are always drawing, and you're always trying to figure out what it is you want to say. And that's what it's all about.
Do you write for an editor ever? I mean, in the sense that you have an idea and you think, ooh, if I just tweak this a little bit, that particular editor will like this cartoon?
I mean, I've been doing it long enough so that you can't ignore. I only have one editor, really, at this point. You can't ignore in the background that I'm writing for the New Yorker audience, so that's where that goes, but I don't consciously think about that.
You don't think about the editor?
No, but I do know, like, if I'm going to do a cartoon about Trump, that they're not going to even consider it, because they don't, I mean, they do Trump cartoons, but the kind I do are not really New Yorker style Trump. It's complicated. Now they're doing more online. They have a daily cartoon, you guys probably know, and those can be pretty political. But my political cartoons are more in the European style of just visuals of Trump and Hegseth and things like that. So they're not New Yorker cartoon style.
I also love how your cartoons about politics are uplifting. I mean, they feel light even if the subject is
thank
heavy.
you.
And that's not easy to do.
I think sometimes when you get too mean, it just turns people away. And you end up only speaking to your demographic, which I'm doing anyway. I don't know who I'm talking to half the time. Yeah, mean cartoons, I mean, I do get mean sometimes. I don't know, it's a fine line. Doing more and more cartoons about politicians you hate sitting on the toilet, what does that serve? You know, what kind of purpose does that serve?
So that, I'm gonna change this one a little bit. Somebody asked me, what does I can't actually read the word. What can an aspiring historian do to get started? And the answer to that, I'm actually going to turn into a question about cartooning, because that's why they gave me this perch over here. Read and write, read and write, read and write, read and write. And I will say, in terms of what I do, you know, before I started Letters from an American, I was a decent writer. I think I'd written, I don't know, 5 or 6 books, and they were well received. But, you know, sitting down every night and writing, by the time it goes up 1,500 words, I write thousands of words a day, and I throw out most of them. You get really good. I'm now a good writer. I was decent before. I'm now a good writer. And I think that if I turn that to you and say, how do you get involved in cartooning? One of the things that jumped out about the film was that when all those women sat down at that table, they all started cartooning before they started speaking, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. You would say the same thing for a cartoonist, right? Just do it.
Yeah, just do it, and you're going to make mistakes. Just make the mistakes and do it again, or try some different angle. You're just constantly redoing it, shifting around. Somebody asked a question about, can you appeal to the editor to reconsider? Yeah, you can send it in again if you really think they missed it, or you really think they're wrong. And I've done that many times, and sometimes they do buy it. And then sometimes I'll take a cartoon and, like you do with your writing, it got rejected, I will look at it again and I'll reorder the caption, slightly shift the caption, maybe adjust something. I have a quick story. The War on Women cartoon, a little girl's talking to her mother, what did you do in the War on Women, Mommy? Was submitted numerous times, and they didn't buy it. That was done during a time in politics when that phrase was being used in the news. And then I put it on the internet, and I didn't have Substack yet, didn't exist. And then I redrew it, and I put the man as the parent. Little girl saying to her father, what did you do in the War on Women? This is probably 10 years ago or 8 years ago. And they wanted to buy that one. So what does that mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Interesting. Then they add the fact checkers, which is what they do. They looked online and they saw that I posted the other one with the woman, and they said, I'm sorry, we can't buy it. So they didn't buy it. But isn't that interesting that it was not this current editor, it was Bob Mankoff, the editor, who rejected it, or David Remnick, I don't know who.
Rejected it when the character, the
was a woman, was a mother.
Yeah. And interesting.
It has a different tone to it. And we've talked about that with other cartoonists, like if you change the gender, it changes the idea.
Does it change the buying always, or was that an aberration?
Say it again?
It changes the cartoon, it changes the humor. Does it change the the odds of it getting bought? I mean, does it appear that there are certain cartoons with gender patterns that get bought by the New Yorker and certain patterns that don't?
I really don't know, but it probably. And I asked Bishak, the woman in the film who is transgender, we don't have it on the film, but this is a couple years ago, is the New Yorker ready for cartoons about being transgender? And she said, not yet. This was a couple of years ago. But she did sell one, a sequential drawing to the New Yorker about misgendering. So misgendering, somebody was being misgendered. So there's, now that we're getting used to cartoons about women's experiences, we're also getting used to cartoons about people who are gay. Also, there's cartoons by a gay man now. So it's interesting how it's shifting.
Did that reflect changes in the demographic that was buying the New Yorker? Or is the cart coming before the horse? Will that change the demographic of people buying the New Yorker?
I don't know. I think women have probably been the predominant buyers of the New Yorker for most of its life.
Really?
I don't know that for sure. Don't quote me on that. But
Interesting.
I know that, yeah. So in that way, it didn't connect until recently, that more cartoons about being a woman. I think it's just cultural.
I had no, I guess because of I know the early years really well, I did not think about it being bought by women because it was such a man's world.
Right, but here's another interesting thing. One of the inspirations for my book was another book by a woman named Judith Lee called Defining New Yorker Humor. And in that book, this is back in the early 2000s, in that book, I think she wrote, I think it was her that wrote about this, that the New Yorker in the 50s was so popular with women around the country in small places, small towns in the middle of the country because they felt like they were part of something. They were witnessing a life that they couldn't live. So I think they were enjoying the magazine because it was something they couldn't participate in.
We got it.
Sorry?
We got it in Yarmouth, Maine.
Did
we
you?
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. I grew up in Washington, D.C. We got it too, but...
Yeah. I had to stop subscribing at one point because I felt like the fiction issue was judging me. I could never make it through that one, and I was like, it would pile up.
What other questions?
I think we have time for two more, and I'll have the last one because they literally put "save for last" on it.
Oh, okay. A lot of these we've answered, I'm afraid.
So I love that you put two people. This is actually what happens when we work together too. Oh, look, we have all this stuff out here. Wait, what if you change that? Oh, no.
It's really
wait.
great working with Heather because we'll come up with an idea for the monthly thing, and you'll have a take on it, and then I'll have a take on it, and this is all through Zoom, and remarkably, you'll see something differently because I said something, and then I'll see something. So then I come up with a drawing, and she comes up with her script, and
Well, and we have a young person, a comms person, who also sits in on those and comes up with all kinds of ideas that are, I think, great, and also not ones that I would come up with.
exactly, different generation too. Yeah.
Yeah, which is again the idea of women coming together in. I mean, I guess maybe that's in a way reproduction of this project that took place among cartoonists in the New Yorker, is a whole bunch of women coming together to observe the world and create art about it from a place of friendship and joy that we're putting out in the world in hopes of changing stuff. Okay, last question. What gives you hope?
We were just talking about that, and before we got on stage, I thought we should start with that because I think people come to you for information, but also for hope. And
and I write from a place of hope, and I'm happy. You know what? I'm going to give you the last word. And I come from a place of hope because somebody actually sent me something the other day that ChatGPT had said about me, which is not necessarily the best thing to do for a writer. And I thought in many ways it was charitable, and in some ways it was uncharitable, but it suggested that it was completely unrealistic to have hope in the moment in which we're living. And I have a real problem with that because human beings, and certainly people in the United States of America, have lived through truly horrible things before and come out on the other side.
That's what I get from your writing.
Right. So when you think about it that way, how can you not have hope? Because every time in the past, 100% of the times in the past, we've come through it. So unless history is going to take an odd turn, I am standing on really good ground to say, this too shall pass. We just have to figure out how to make it pass as quickly as possible. But I actually think art and your art provides a different kind of an answer for why there is hope. And I look to the arts for a regrounding in humanity and aspirations. And I wonder if your take on why you have hope reflects more the power of art, both to soothe but also to change, than my ease of simply saying, well, if we could live through the Civil War, we can live through this, right? To me, what you do seems profounder in some ways than that.
Well, thank you, but I think drawing, and that's one reason why I wanted to show people drawing in this movie, and I've experienced it on my own, just drawing on my desk with the phone over my hand and putting it on social media. During the pandemic, I did that every day, and people said it really calmed them down, and then they felt a sense of community because they were all gathering together to watch me draw. It doesn't matter that I was drawing, I think it was just somebody was drawing. A hand was creating something, and it made people calm and hopeful to see that humans are doing this still. The other thing is, why would I be doing this if I didn't have hope? You know, you have, as a cartoonist, I think you have to have hope. And otherwise, you wouldn't be in this business.
Well, it's also a joy to watch somebody who loves what they're doing, you know, and that
Yeah,
being able to
true.
be in the same place with somebody who can create life out of paper, which is a miracle, you know, is something that feels like in a moment when we are all grasping to see creativity and building as opposed to destruction, that feels like a very warm and community and comforting place to be.
Thank you.
So, thank you for this film.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the film.
Thank you for all you
And
do.
thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everybody.